Hello and welcome to episode 134 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is March 4th, 2019. I am Rollo McFlugel, and I am very happy that we are out of the month of February because I felt like I struggled saying that word every time. Yeah. And with me, as you've just heard, is Slappy Jones too, and we are both from McFlugel.com. The show notes for this page is McFlugel.com/134, where you'll be able to find links to the things we talk about, as well as check out our sponsor, LibertyMugs.com, where you can buy some awesome libertarian-themed mugs and T-shirts, and even a hat, and maybe some other stuff in there too. So make sure to go check that out and buy a bunch of mugs. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Slappy, and he's going to introduce our episode topic.
Thanks, Rollo. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Today, we are talking about an opinion piece that was written in the Philadelphia Inquirer today, March 4th, titled "Philly Needs a Bill of Rights for Domestic Workers." It's by Annie Johnson for the Inquirer. So I'll read through this and we'll comment on it, have some opinions. I think it'll give us a lot of talking points. So here we go. And this is the article I'm reading. I'll let you know when I'm done reading. As a professional nanny with 24 years of experience in the field, I love taking care of children and supporting their growth and learning. I have 2 degrees in early childhood education from both the University of the West Indies in my home country of Trinidad and Tobago and from Community College in New York. And I'm committed to providing the best care possible to my employers. My work as a nanny enables mothers and fathers to go to their workplace with peace of mind that the most important elements of life, loved ones and homes, are well cared for. But domestic workers like me, nannies, house cleaners, and caregivers, don't get that same peace of mind. We don't get the basic labor protections other workers do. We don't qualify for minimum wage and overtime protections. We aren't protected by the Federal Civil Rights Act, which governs gender and racial discrimination. We don't get workplace safety protections. We don't have the ability to unionize. And we're not protected from retaliation if we do speak up about the ways we're abused and taken advantage of. It's no mistake we're denied these basic protections. It's part of the enduring legacy of slavery. Domestic workers and agriculture workers were left out of the 1930s labor law because of the vast majority were Black descendants of slaves. Today, that legacy of poverty, wages, and racial discrimination lives on. In Philadelphia, there are 16,000 domestic workers who make an average of $10,100 annually, according to research by the University of Pennsylvania sociology professor Pilar González Pons. Sorry for that pronunciation. This means that in the poorest major city with a soaring poverty rate, we are amongst the lowest paid and most exploited of the working poor. The vast majority of us women are women of color, Black and immigrant women, many of whom are undocumented. Domestic workers frequently experience wage theft, verbal abuse, sexual harassment, threats to call ICE if we speak up about our working conditions, daily injustices of racism and prejudice, employers who refuse to pay and who barge into living quarters after work hours are done for live-in nannies and caregivers. It's time for this to change. And got about 2 more paragraphs left. Do you want me to just read the whole thing?
There's actually more than 2 paragraphs because it
continues on. I see.
Yeah, but
okay.
No, let's stop here.
Let's cut it there. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's talk about kind of this setup.
Sure.
Because there's a lot in there.
There was.
And for one, I don't think we really need to treat this as, being a domestic worker or a nanny. I think it's going to be easier just calling this thing a nanny. People like to separate different jobs out and make it seem like one's different from the other, but we can apply this to any other sort of labor.
What do they consider? Is domestic workers, would that be considered like a housekeeper as opposed to watching children?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know actually. Yeah, it is because she does actually specify that.
Yeah.
She says, but domestic workers like me, nannies, house cleaners, and caregivers.
Right.
So, like, McDonald's and fast food places, we know that the fight for 15 and higher minimum wage laws that's normally where people are fighting these battles for. And, all the arguments as to why they make a certain wage can be applied here, basically. There's not that much difference. I guess to an extent that maybe a lot of this work is under the table, or at least they don't have, I guess it's difficult to maybe enforce certain normal labor laws that are on the books. I don't know that a lot of these domestic workers would, if they're like contractors, if they're self-employed, and if they are contractors, that it's just kind of they don't really care as much about their individual employees because this is low-skilled work.
Yeah.
To put it bluntly.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's someone who would be willing to take the job, I'm assuming. One thing I think that is kind of important is that there's actually a link here, and maybe I'll click on that link to read it. But it says in Philadelphia, there are 16,000 domestic workers who make an average of $10,100 annually. That $10,100 annually, I mean, it's a statistic that we haven't looked into. Is that 40-hour work weeks? Is that 2 days a week? Is that 2 hours a week? Are they all included in the calculation? I know what the cost of daycare is. And I mean, I know the individual people working at the daycare aren't making all the money I'm paying for daycare, but it's not cheap.
Right.
To have someone live in your house, I mean, you are giving them a room.
That's the thing, too, is that, I mean, I don't know that this woman is taking into account room and board as part of the compensation.
Part of compensation. And not like, look,
maybe they are paying her. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, but let's take her situation for what she's describing it as. Like, if you're working and all you can make is $10,000 and you can't get another job making more or whatever the case is, why is that? She mentioned a lot of them are undocumented. Is that a problem with some of these immigration laws? Maybe if we got rid of those laws, these people could earn some money.
Well, she kind of mentioned it too, is that they threatened to call
Take
ICE.
ICE, right.
And I know this, employers don't control work visas in the United States. I don't believe they do. But I know, and I think in Saudi Arabia, and there are other countries that do this too, that part of the thing is that when they bring in these immigrants on work visas, because people like to say that in this country, is they say, oh, as long as you have a job and you can prove you have a job that you're coming to, then yeah, you can come work in the country, and that's great and all. And so it might make sense on the surface to have the employer be the one that kind of manages the visas, or at least the permission that allows an immigrant to come live in a country. But I mean, you kind of see what could happen right away right there, right? Is that now they have a lot of power.
Right.
And I know in Saudi Arabia, this is a huge problem that they essentially almost turn these people into somewhat slave labor, because they'll just say, hey, if you complain or cause a problem or try to report me, then I'm going to cancel your visa and you're going to get sent back to where you are. So it's really not a good situation. I don't think that necessarily applies here. At least clearly to illegal immigrants, it does. But for this woman, it doesn't. But it just is a good example of how a situation can be made bad or worse. All right, so let's kind of tie a bow on that point about illegal immigrants, though, because it is an issue, and she mentions it, and we know that there's a lot here.
Certainly.
So how do we solve that problem?
Well, if you're talking about in today's climate, I don't know. But if you think about it, why is someone illegal for being here and working? And if that wasn't illegal, they now have leverage. They can go elsewhere. They don't have to hide.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know that that what this woman's proposing eventually, or any sort of law, would provide protections for illegal immigrants, because, I mean, if they report
they're illegal immigrants, I mean,
right,
ICE isn't going away.
Yeah, then they're reporting themselves to the authorities. It kind of that.
Yeah, so you'd have to loosen up the immigration laws.
Right.
I know. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I know that there's a lot of people who work as I guess domestic workers is what they call them here, but house cleaners who are immigrants looking for work, looking for any way to get money. And this is the jobs that are available to them. And it's the jobs they take.
Yeah. So if they're getting paid below minimum wage, I mean, that's what the going rate is. It's just like any other sort of price. If you raise that price, demand isn't likely to follow up with it, and to just kind of keep the same demand or more if you raise the price on the supply.
Well, so they're going to look at alternatives. I mean, if you're hiring, so that's another thing. The person hiring is probably taking on some kind of risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're housing an illegal immigrant. I can't imagine that's legal.
Well, even if they're just hiring them for clean, like just a cleaner
coming in a cleaning service, or even just watching your kids here and there, or
they come in and clean your house once a week. If that starts becoming too expensive, then one, they'll
clean it themselves, or hire someone else to do it. Like I was saying, the price of daycare is really high. I don't know if people use personal nannies as an alternative to daycare. I got to imagine having a personal nanny live in your house or come watch your kids on a daily basis probably is more expensive than sending them to a daycare center.
Yeah, I don't know, because I don't know.
But I don't know. I don't know.
But I do. I mean, that does happen a lot. There are live-in nannies or people that.
No, I know. I personally know someone who's a live-in nanny up in New York City. I know they're out there. I know they exist.
Right. And that's another, because I think this is what this woman does, is she talks about childcare and everything. In the beginning, she says, she's got 2 degrees in early childhood education. Well, I mean, that's fantastic for her, I guess.
And I don't think, did she mention, I don't think she's an illegal immigrant. No. I don't know if she mentions that. I just think she just said many of whom are undocumented.
Right. Yeah. I don't think she was trying to say that this is strictly an illegal immigrant problem. She's saying it's more a problem for women of color.
Yeah.
And immigrants, but
I
don't even care about
color.
Yeah, I mean, with the like talking about the analysis of it, like that doesn't even,
it doesn't factor into it,
right?
I mean,
not
if they're
at
all
all. So
with the same situation, I mean, what does it matter what color their skin is?
Yeah. So if you're waiting for us to kind of address that, we're probably not.
Yeah,
it's
has nothing to do with the argument.
Yeah, it's non-consequential. But we're talking about, and I mentioned it earlier, we're talking about low skill labor. It's not, you don't need that much skill to clean a house. The equipment that you're operating is very simple. As far as doing daycare work, I mean, that's not that high of a skill either. I mean, not well. I mean,
I know what you mean. I do know what you mean. It's not like you don't need.
Who's the babysitter? It's the 15-year-old girl in the neighborhood.
Yes, and every single. There's a lot of people who have kids and watch kids all day. It doesn't take years of training to do that.
It's fairly an instinctual thing.
Yes, exactly. In no way am I saying it is an easy job to watch kids. I have 3 of them, and it's not easy. But it doesn't take. I know what you're saying, and I just want to make that clear to anyone listening with kids who thinks we're laughing that it's an easy job to take care of kids. It's not.
Oh, no, because you should have seen me the first time I had to change a diaper and I was the only adult there. It was not fun.
But you do it a couple times, you got it down.
But there's certain, but there's certainly hard work out there that is an easy and not a difficult task. Like digging a hole,
digging a ditch
is hard work, but it is not skilled labor. So
correct.
When I say that, that just means that you can basically grab anybody as long as this person's not an absolute lunatic, and they could probably make sure that your kid doesn't, survives the day.
Or at the very least, there's a high supply of people who can.
Yes. So with that in mind, especially when you can get the 15-year-old girl down the street, maybe not during the school year, during the school year, because she's got to go to school. But if that's the type of person you can get to do this work, I mean, it's great that this woman has 2 degrees, but that's not going to help you. Like, at least not in this work. I'm sure there's jobs where those degrees would actually be useful, maybe, but I mean, you can't just say because let's say
I have a degree, I deserve something.
Let's say you have the greatest neurosurgeon in the world who's got 15 degrees and starts doing this work. And he's going to say, well, I'm a neurosurgeon. I'm used to getting paid $600,000 a year for the work I do. You can't pay me 10 grand a year to do this work. Well, okay, fine. You can charge $600,000 a year to do child care.
Yeah.
And no one's going to hire you.
And if someone does, then you can take it.
Right.
But probably not, because there's a market wage that's a lot lower that someone would rather pay less for, most likely.
Yes. So, I mean, maybe if this woman wants to be able to raise a raise, she should probably try to convince everyone else to leave the field. So there's a smaller supply, and she'll be in more demand.
Some kind of service to make herself more in demand.
Exactly. I mean, be entrepreneurial about it. Don't just expect that. Well, these people owe me something.
I went to school, therefore you should pay me more.
Right, and I deserve, overtime pay, the way time and a half and all this other stuff the way I want it. I should. It's make yourself more valuable. Maybe.
Right. Well, she could. There's nothing that I know of preventing her from, when she talks to her clients or her, I guess her employers, how she put it, to say, look, I will do this work, but here are my conditions. And if they accept it, there you go. If they don't accept it, they still need someone to watch their kids. So the assumption is they can find someone else for that price.
Yeah.
If you can't demand that wage, then you're not going to get it. And why should someone hold a gun to your employer and force them to pay you more because you went to school?
Right, because now all of a sudden we're going to have to pay all this other stuff and provide all these other benefits. That doesn't come at zero cost. I mean,
yeah. The other thing we're talking about here, which is just kind of scary. She says, if we speak up about our working conditions, well, her working conditions are in somebody's home.
Yeah.
Do you really want government people coming into your house to check to make sure your private property is okay for someone that you're hiring to work there?
Yeah, that's pretty scary.
I don't know what kind of houses she's working in. Most people who get live-in nannies are usually pretty wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I that $10,000 number seems very low. I think that takes into account people who do it 1 day a week, 1 hour. It just seems really low from what I know that people make in that job.
Right. Oh, I'm sure it is.
And I'm talking about live-in nannies who are there like full time. They make much more than $10,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. Well, plus they're. I mean, I don't know what each arrangement is, but
true.
Do they pay? I haven't gone into this depth of conversation with a nanny because it's also personal finance questions I'm not going to ask. But I mean, I think there's a pretty good chance that you're not paying for housing.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's included in the much more than $10,000 a year,
right?
And they're usually now. I don't know the circumstances this woman's talking about.
Well, that's the thing, and that's part of the issue with her just taking that average number and applying it to all these different things, because there's 8 bajillion circumstances that there can be that doesn't make it so that you can just take one number. You can't, these aren't all easily comparable.
Like if that $10,000, let's just say that is the right number that they get, that on average, it's a real good number that they get paid. And it's $10,000 of essentially spending cash a year because your living, or say if you want to save it, that's fine. But your living quarters are taken care of. A lot of times there's vacations paid for, depending on what your situation is. I know not everyone, I'm not, if there's any nannies out here listening who aren't living with a millionaire and going on vacations, I'm just putting it out there. The cost of living, the cost of renting, a lot of times in a city, isn't cheap. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of money to account for, and the food, the meals, I'm sure a lot of them are paid for. Although not, again, we're talking about a wide range of jobs and a wide range of circumstances. It's really hard to pin it down with an average.
Right.
And I guess the point is, even those nannies who are, I'll say, doing well in a sense, living in a nice area with a wealthy employer, with their vacations and foods paid for. Now, when I say vacation, of course, they're watching the kids on vacation. They're still working on vacation. They can demand that wage. Mm-hmm. What are they doing that allows them to live in those circumstances as opposed to someone else who is struggling to get by with 2 degrees or whatever the case is?
Yeah. Or even in another situation where, say, it's a house cleaner, and we'll use that $10,000 a year salary.
Yeah, we're talking about just someone who comes in and cleans a house. Maybe, I don't know. I just know this is covering so many different jobs and so many circumstances. Right. And my point in bringing up these wealthier ones is that option is available to them somehow. Somehow they separated themselves and got that job. Right, however, they showed they were responsible. That's my point in bringing that up, because I know there's poor people who clean houses for a living in private residences. They come in once a week or once a month or whatever the agreement was, and they're probably making very little money. And they come in, they clean, they go out. They're not live-in nannies. They're not doing all that. My point is that there are people in the same industry who are doing much better.
Right. And
why is that?
Yeah.
And how is that?
Yeah, maybe they should figure out what those people are doing. But
right.
But yeah, so these people that don't have those great situations, it's, well, exactly what you just said, is there's a way to be better at whatever you're doing to get to that spot. Or, unfortunately, life isn't easy. And if you don't have a good job that is very fulfilling and pays you enough, I mean, you can sit there and complain and hope that the government takes care of you or does something else. But I mean, in the meantime, maybe look for different work, try to learn a skill, do
anything to improve yourself.
Right.
Again, I know that's easier said than done. If you don't have a lot of money to begin with and you're barely getting by, it's hard to go pay for more education. But this woman got 2 college degrees.
Yeah.
I mean, did she not look at what the income of these people, if that's an average, I'm sure she could have Googled that and saw average of $10,000 a year. And I don't know what she paid for her education, but it's probably more than that.
Yeah.
I mean, those are choices you make. It's not like 10 years ago, these people were making $150,000 and now they're making 10 for some weird reason. You knew this going into it.
Yeah.
I assume you could have went to college for other majors, unless there was some kind of program that you had to take that one. I don't know. So anyway, why don't I continue reading?
Sure.
Okay. As a Black immigrant woman and a member of the Pennsylvania Domestic Workers Alliance, I am fighting for a domestic worker bill of rights, so domestic workers like me get better treatment at work and basic labor protections. 7 states plus Seattle have already passed domestic worker bills of rights to ensure respect, professionalism, and safety on the job for millions of domestic workers like myself. This legislation closes loopholes in labor law that leave domestic workers unprotected while guaranteeing fair play, safe working conditions, and the ability to hold employers accountable if they violate our rights. It's time for Philadelphia to do the same thing, to do the same and pass a domestic worker bill of rights. It's common sense. Before moving to Philadelphia, I worked as a nanny in New York, which already has a domestic worker bill of rights. I was treated much better in New York. In New York, I had a written contract, paid days off, and was able to get a yearly raise. While I did experience mistreatment from some employers, my important caregiving work was more visible and more respected. In Philadelphia, I worked behind closed doors without any of the benefits and protections I had in New York. I love the city, and I want City Council to step up to protect people like me. I'm excited to work alongside strong women in City Council to make our rights a reality here in Philadelphia. It's time to honor the dignity in all work by passing a Philadelphia Domestic Worker Bill of Rights to guarantee that those of us who take care of other people's homes and families are taken care of too. Period. End of article.
So I kind of want to talk about the point she brings up about things like wage theft and the other rights being violated. We'll just assume that these are, her rights are actually being violated and talk about that. Because, I mean, if the employer, because we've been kind of dumping on her a little bit. So
Sure.
let's take another angle at this, one that's more holistic and it would solve the roots of these problems. Because if it is wrong and it is stealing, if they say, oh, we're going to pay you, I don't know, $10 an hour for 40 hours a week, and so you expect $400 at the end of the week, and they pay you $300.
That's stealing. They stole their labor.
Right. So, and of course we would say, well, if you're getting abused at work like that and you still remain there, then that's probably the best option that you have. And so, hey, you should still work there. And maybe that's true, but I don't know how satisfying that shouldn't be the end of the story. Because it's still not that it validates the theft, but I think there should be more to it that's hey, I mean, in a well-functioning society, you just wouldn't have to put up with it. Because why don't these people have better available jobs? Why is there so much struggling with this stuff? Why is it? Because I don't think these people, when I was saying that this was low skilled work, I don't mean that these people are necessarily stupid or dumb
or not good at what they do.
Right. Or incapable. It just means that this work that they're able to do just has those qualities. Do you think that the government's regulations and laws might have something to do with the inability for people to find alternative work, or that maybe it might be difficult for these people to engage in entrepreneurship and kind of be their own boss?
Well, one thing I find interesting about this, speaking of government regulations, I think we've talked about it before, about how Milton Friedman has talked about licensing and licensing and zoning rules. What else? What credentialing is designed to keep low skilled or uneducated, I use that in quotes, unschooled people out of the workforce. And that's exactly what she's arguing for. Right. Because like you said, the alternative is to hire the 15-year-old kid down the street. But if you make it illegal to hire the 15-year-old kid down the street because you need to have a degree or you need to have this or X years experience or whatever their licensing laws require, that keeps a good portion of the market out of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And artificially raises the wages of the people who are licensed.
Right.
And keeps people poor, generally poor people or people starting their career, keeps them out and keeps them away, unable to earn any money. And if someone can do this job as a 15-year-old, maybe the 15-year-old should be doing the job and getting the experience and earning some money and able to then either start their own business or move on to something else as they can demand more for their time.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And we can even take it to another layer, one that Milton Friedman would have gotten wrong. But you look at the Federal Reserve, because Milton Friedman
he was a monetary guy.
Yep. And you look at all the problems that has caused, and you can look at it kind of from two different angles, and you kind of wonder which would overcome the other one, but it doesn't matter because everyone will be way wealthier. But because the Federal Reserve is destroying the value of everyone's money, we don't have the resources being able to be directed to where they should be, that you would have a lot more wealth created. Instead, you'd have central planners taking money. And I'm going, this isn't just the Federal Reserve now, obviously, but you have central planners taking money and directing resources where they want it to go, not where private people would direct it to, and maximizing the uses of it. And also it's just, you're just, because of the Fed, your money is just losing value. And so you don't have the incentive to save as much as you would. So because of the lack of saving, you're not, there's not as much capital investment being made. And so without the capital investment being made, you don't have a society that is as productive. And because your society is not as productive, there's less to consume. And so it just has this terrible cascading effect, top to bottom, that just destroys so much wealth and opportunity. So on one hand, the Federal Reserve and monetary policy, I don't even want to call it bad monetary policy anymore. Just monetary policy.
Yeah.
There should, monetary policy just should not exist. So it's always going to be bad. So you look at it on one hand, and you see that because wealth is being destroyed and you're losing the value of your money. Back when our parents grew up, they're probably on one family incomes. Just the father went to work and the mom stayed at home, took care of the kids and took care of the house. So on one hand, if we still had that, you wouldn't have the need to have two incomes in the family just to live a normal middle class life. But because of the way that our economy is structured, that's necessary for a lot of people. And we can get into, well, are these people actually, budgeting their money well and everything? But that's part of it because we don't have this mindset to save, because we don't have, because money is losing its value. There's the incentive to spend it more quickly than you would, and not to save it. It lowers everyone's time preferences. Sorry. It raises everyone's time preferences. Right. So it creates this irresponsible behavior with money. So it's just this nasty kind of snowballing effect with it. And so on the one hand, if we had sound money where it was actually gaining and purchasing power as the economy grew, there would be less of a need, I would think, for families to hire nannies, because you would probably have a parent staying home and raising the kids. But on the other hand, we would be so much wealthier that they could probably be more likely to afford to be able to hire that, or maybe not nanny work. I would hope that a low time preference wealthy society would want to raise their own children and not want to farm that out to someone else. Not that nannies and daycare workers can't do a good job, but they're not the parents. So, but for things like cleaning and others work, and maybe because of this greater generation of wealth, there's other opportunities. Like I said, it's not, you've got better capital investments. So you've got opportunities there. And then because of the increase in consumption that brings, because you've got better purchasing power and better efficiency at making this stuff, there's other opportunities in those sectors too. So these people wouldn't be, between that and the lack of just such tight restrictive regulation that we mentioned before, there'd be way more opportunities for women like this that we're talking, who wrote this article, and the people she's talking about.
And I mean, yeah, I mean, the reality of this is if they put this in, she's probably, her next article is going to be complaining about how there's no work and she did all this education and had years of experience and can't find an employer.
Yeah, because she's demanding so much because she's got to pay for her degree and everything, but the migrant worker that's just there to make whatever he can is taking the work, and he doesn't care about the conditions as much. He just cares about earning a couple bucks and
if someone's willing to work for $10,100 a year, why should anyone prevent them from doing that?
Right. Well, and she made mention of the let me find the spot in the article. Domestic workers and agricultural workers were left out of 1930s labor laws because of the vast majority were black descendants of slaves. Maybe, I mean, we know the government was massively racist back then, but at the same time, I know a lot of, and even today, there's a blind eye turned towards agricultural workers with how much they're getting paid, and that's the blind eye is turned towards illegal immigration because those people are necessary.
Yep.
To be paid low wages to keep prices down for consumers. So it may not just be as simple as just saying, oh, well, they're black people and they're racist, and so therefore, it's very likely a little bit more complicated than that. So we could,
I mean, yeah.
Because you could look at it right now and say that, well, the reason that that these immigrants, these agricultural immigrants don't have minimum wage protections and everything is because they're just racist and no one cares about them. It's like, no, it's actually necessary for the economy. And, fewer would be hired if they impose minimum wage on them. So it's actually very, very beneficial to them that these rules don't exist.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I guess she doesn't say that. She says, when I was in New York, I had a written contract, paid days off, and was able to get a yearly raise. You're able to get all that anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're working without a written contract, that's dangerous for the employer and the employee. Mm-hmm. So I doubt that's the case, that there is no written contract for these workers. If there is, again, that's present a contract, present an agreement. If they refuse to sign it and want to hire someone who doesn't want to do it, well, that's, again, the market speaking. And they're taking on liability there as well, the employer.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder too, and this is just pure speculation, and it might not have anything to do with this, but I wonder why she left New York.
I was thinking that too. If it was
came to Philadelphia,
why did you leave New York and come here? My guess is she couldn't find work in New York.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I was kind of going with it. I mean, there could have been other extenuating circumstances.
There could have been.
But, I mean,
maybe I don't know. I don't want to assume anything, but it's possible she had a job and then lost the job. And maybe she lost it because she didn't do a good job. Maybe she did a great job and the employer just didn't need her anymore. Or didn't need her, find someone else to hire her. So she went to where there was work, which was Philadelphia.
Or didn't need her for that price.
Well, that's exactly. That's what didn't need her for whatever the case is. Didn't need her. So stopped paying her. And I mean, we don't know what it is. Maybe she moved here because she had family come over and they lived in Philadelphia and she wanted to be closer. But that's still a decision she made. Mm-hmm. So there's but I have a funny feeling it's because she had a great job there and then couldn't find work and came to Philadelphia. Although we don't know that for sure.
Right.
So it is what it is. But
yeah, one thing and another, I was reading about the New York labor law that she was talking about, and I don't, I'm trying to be fair and put myself in her shoes, but I don't really understand why she thinks it's so great, because they don't guarantee access to tractors in it.
they do not.
So, I mean, what are you really getting out of it if you don't have that? So,
Well, obviously not much because she left there.
it's true.
What else? I had something else I was going to say, and then the tractor threw me off my thought.
No, what they say, tractor's mightier than the brain.
Mm-hmm. That's what they always say.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you think about it, but if you think of what you want to say, bring it up. But I figured I'll just kind of give closing thoughts.
Sure.
Is that, and this applies to everything, because the more the more I learn about Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin made me learn about money, and then money's making me learn about, the economics of money is making me learn more about the history of money, and it's making me think about all this other stuff. I mean, the more you dig, the more you realize that what these problems are. And, we can talk about the surface issues, but, if you were to approach this woman and say like, oh, well, if you ask for a minimum wage, then you're not going to be employed. I mean, maybe you can say that, but I think it's better to take the more holistic approach and say, well, maybe not when you're directly talking to her, because to explain the Federal Reserve to just the average person is going to make them want to blow their brains out. But at least when you're trying to like figure out what these problems are with society, so that you can at least have your head screwed on straight when thinking about this stuff, is you really have to like dig deep to these ultimate root causes, which is controlled money supply.
Yeah, of course.
So
I was going to say, I do remember what I was going to say, and I'll just throw it out there. It's like, I really don't blame her for thinking the way she does. If you don't think about these things, and you had a job in New York and it was pretty good, and then you're looking, you lost that job for whatever reason, and whatever the reason was that she lost it, maybe she quit. We have no idea. But she was looking for other work, it seems. And she's looking for the same thing she had, and she's not finding it anywhere, and that frustrates her. And she says, there's these laws in New York, why don't we have them in Philadelphia? It'll make things better. But I don't think she realizes what she's arguing for. And instead of getting an economics degree, she got whatever degree she got. Well,
and it's very easy to fall in the trap of not really understanding like the ceteris paribus condition, where you have to hold everything else equal.
Yeah.
You change a variable to see what that tweaks. It's very easy for anyone to make that mistake. And so someone that, I don't think this woman has ever thought anything about economics. So
no, I mean, based on her writing, it doesn't seem that she
right. Which I don't mean that as like really an insult, because I think that's normal. Most people don't have these thoughts because they're not nerds like they're like you, like me, and Slappy, and everyone who's listening. So that's really why it's. And I'll tie this. I'll make another point. This is why we can talk about evangelizing this stuff, and I don't want to tell anyone not to do that, because I think there's some use to it, but I really do think that the solution is not the ultimate solution of the problem of the state is not evangelizing and getting the message out.
Agreed.
But that it's creating technology that just makes the state obsolete, so that this woman just has better opportunities presented to herself, so that
she will take those opportunities.
Right. And
the same with ending public school, the same with everything else. If you show better opportunities, you don't have to convince people why public schooling is bad.
Right.
You just show these other opportunities, and then people start doing them.
Mm-hmm. And it'll just make all of her problems a moot point.
And
which is the best outcome you could have, I think.
Yeah, I can't envision a better one. And that's what, when people say, okay, yeah, you're all this anarchist stuff, it makes sense to me, but it's not going to happen. Like, you're not going to just get the government to quit. And it's like, yeah, I know, we're going to make them irrelevant. We're going to do things where they don't appear to be needed anymore. And I think that's the way to get there. I don't think there's another way to do it.
Yep.
A violent revolution isn't going to do it. You overthrow the government, there's going to be another one tomorrow.
Yep. And that's why I, with our episode last week, I changed the intro music and added some outro music. That I don't know. I put it there for a reason. It was about the Civil War, so it wasn't quite perfect, but I used the song The Knife from by Genesis, and it's about how violent revolution always ends up having you end up with the same thing that you just had previously fought against. So
here comes the new boss, same as the old boss.
Yep. Different band, but same point. I know.
For the record, I wasn't implying it was Genesis.
I know that, but I just had to.
That's fine. But you like that band too.
I do like that band. Actually, one of their album they might have my favorite album of all time.
Is that so? Which one?
I want to see if our listeners can figure it out.
Okay.
Because this is one of the few times that I really like something, but don't always constantly talk everyone's ears off about it.
You like their 1972 album, The Fruitcake Tractor?
Yes. I mean, who doesn't love that album?
It's a very little known album that only the real fans know about.
Yeah, it got lost in Electric Ladyland Studios, but it got uncovered eventually. So
yeah, it was before the time of the internet.
Yep. So we didn't talk about this. I completely forgot because we were talking about other stuff before we went on. But do you have a free market success story?
No.
I do.
Good.
Yeah. So I don't know. A couple months ago, the church I go to finally implemented paying your tithe electronically, like with your credit card. You could set it up regular payments instead of doing it. For those that are not familiar with this, that you get mail, at least in a Catholic church. I don't know how other churches do it, but a lot of Catholic churches, they send out your envelopes.
Envelopes in the mail, yeah.
Yep. So every couple months, you get your package of envelopes, and that's how you give your weekly tithing to your church. And I would, you write a check, you throw it in there. You can give cash, but checks are a little bit easier to track for taxing purposes, to get out of a little bit of taxes. And so it was, you could predict this, since it, literally happens every week, and maybe, write your check the night before and do all that. But no, I, wake up on Sunday morning, and as I'm running out the door, I'm trying to write a check, and it wasn't great. It was stupid. It was annoying, and it was my own fault. But now that I have it set up that they just pull it from my credit card every week, that it saves it creates less of a hassle. It makes it so that you don't even have to think about doing it.
Right.
So if you forget a week or don't have, for whatever reason, you don't make your tithe, you don't have to worry about trying to double up your tithe next week or anything. But the bigger thing that I want to talk about with this, the other benefit that I didn't realize that this was going to happen was I felt a little bit self-conscious in church when they're going around with the collection baskets and I wasn't putting anything in. And I thought, oh man, people are going to think that I'm not giving my tithe. And I stopped myself. I thought, like, well, why does that matter? Like, it shouldn't matter to me. I shouldn't be doing this for vanity so that people, oh, look, he's giving his tithe every week. He's a good person. I mean, so it helps, to be more biblical and religious about it. There's a passage in the Bible that says, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And so, and that means to like
several interpretations of that.
Yes. I don't know what the other one is.
Yeah.
If you're making, okay. But it's to not do things for vanity's sake is the main point of that. Do you agree, Slappy?
Yes, absolutely.
So I never thought about it until I was actually, presented with the thought, the temptation to be vain.
Right.
Was that I realized, actually this is actually a good thing, and it's actually helpful to try to grow as a human being. That maybe I was doing that a little bit, that I was being a little bit prideful of putting that envelope in. And so this makes it more of a private thing, one that you're not don't have the ability to parade around what you're doing. So I think it's a good thing, even for non-religious people out there that might roll their eyes talking about giving money to a church. I think it's a good practice to not be vain about stuff. It's like, I don't know if I complained about this before on the podcast, but do you ever see those videos online where it's like, someone doing a good deed?
Yeah.
They're good. I mean, it's great to see people catching things on video.
Of course, they want to pat on the back.
Yeah, it's one thing when it's like a random stranger happens to record something, but when people are recording themselves or their friends doing something, it's like, man,
it's nice to do something nice, but it's just kind of,
you vain jerk.
Yeah, it's just kind of strange.
You're using someone that's having a bit of trouble or something, just as a tool
to show everyone how great you are.
Yeah, and I guess it's good that person was kind of helped out, but.
And maybe in their mind, or maybe while they put it out there, they want to hope it catches on, but there's something in there that they just feel really good about themselves for and want to let everyone know. I think there's something deep in the conscious that, I don't know. I mean, who knows what their motivation is, but I get the same feeling when I see it. It's like, wow, you really think a lot of yourself now.
Mm-hmm. And I don't mean to say like never, present, like if you do something good that you never, like I was just bragging about how, oh, look at me, I'm not vain anymore. Well, I'm not vain in that area, at least a little bit. Maybe I'm being vain right now or prideful of what I'm doing, but just be careful with what you're doing and just try to check yourself a little bit. Check your vanity privilege or whatever that is.
Yes.
That doesn't even make sense, but I think people know what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
That no matter how good you try to be, you're going to be a hypocrite.
Correct.
This is obviously
just the way it's going to be.
The conclusion, and now.
Yeah, not after saying that. I mean, if you whatever, I don't care. You go want to do something nice and tell people whatever. It's not my style.
Yeah, it's what's going on in your own heart. So
yeah,
that's what matters ultimately. So,
correct.
It might look bad, but if in your heart of hearts, you're doing it for the right reasons, and then that's great. There's no criticism to be there, but I do have a strong suspicion that a lot of these videos are done for the wrong reasons.
Look at me.
Yeah. So
whatever. If you're out there doing nice things for people, keep it up.
Yes. So with that, show notes page again for this episode is mcflugel.com/134. We'll link to this article. It's a Philly.com article, and if you're really interested in reading it and other stuff, and you get hit with a paywall, which I did right before we started recording, if you download their app, just go to wherever you download your apps and type Philly.com. You can get all the articles for free. Just a little bit of a tip there. Yeah. Also, do you know what's funny? Last week I did the intro and the outro, by myself because we pre-recorded the interview. I had so many takes. It's funny. It's the same thing I've done for the last
100 whatever episodes.
Yeah, 130 something episodes, but I couldn't, for whatever reason, just knowing that it was just me there. It was all like I struggled so much. And it wasn't, I don't even think it was just me being a little bit ridiculous and expecting too much of myself. Because this week, especially when I did the intro, I was thinking, as I was going through it, I'm like, wow, you're actually not stumbling over every other word. That's pretty good. And even still, when I hit like, all right, I just got to be satisfied with this. It wasn't, it wasn't as what I was hoping it would be. So it's just kind of funny. So thank you again, Slappy. And if something ever happens to you that you can no longer record with me, then
it'll take a lot longer for you to record an episode.
Yes, just one word at a time. So, all right. I have no idea how long this has been. It might have been for like 20 minutes. It might have been for 2 hours. So thanks for listening, everyone. Go check out libertymugs.com. Buy some mugs, T-shirts, and everything. Annoy your friends and coworkers or make them very happy by showing them the awesome stuff that's there. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Peace.